Let's go ahead and take the shield that we placed inside of Ellen's hand. So just the shield object, we're going to delete this one. Then we're going to go up to the top where we have shield. So up there, if you notice right there, I'm going to take the scale and just take it to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Now we want to take the shield itself, the object, we want to make sure that we have a box collider on it. So we'll take this and make a box collider and set it to be isTrigger. This is going to be so that when she runs across it, she can trigger the object to be attached to the object's shield game object component we have here. We need to make a script. We'll go to Assets, Create, C# script, and we'll call this shield. Let's go ahead and assign this once it gets done compiling. We're going to go to our shield object, add component shield. So the component, double click to open it up. This is going to be setting it up so that we can use a onTrigger enter event. So let's say onTrigger enter, and double check on the player. So we're saying that if it's this player, so what's the player's name? Ellen. Double check that the player has a character controller on it, which means that should actually trigger the collision that needs to take place right there. So let's go back to our code. And from here, we're just going to say if the other dot name is equal to Ellen, then let's do a debug log. We'll say player triggered shield pickup. So if this is the case, we'll double check, make sure that our spelling is correct with it. What we want to do from there is make a public variable here. This can be a transform. This is going to be the target, or we could call it socket, either one. We're going to say that on pickup successful, we're going to say that the this object itself, the shield, so we're going to say this object's transform parent is going to be equal to the target transform, and then we're going to set the value. So remember, we had our position, rotation, scale. We're going to make this a public one. So we're going to say public vector 3, and we'll say this is going to be the position, and you could even say the target position, but we'll do position is going to equal a vector 3, and since we already know the values, we'll place them in. This is going to be the 0.15, and then we've got a negative 0.04, and then a 0. And then we know that we have a rotation as well. The rotation is going to be, it's going to equal a vector. Let's go ahead and make it new right here. We're going to do the vector on this one at 180, and then we just had 0 and 0 set for the other. And then we have one more, which is going to be our scales. And our scale, we're going to make this a public as well, but it doesn't have to be since we've already scaled the object. But this would be that if you wanted to change the scale size, maybe the weapon's bigger so they can see it, and then it scales smaller after they pick it up. So we have this one set for 0.5 across the board. So we have our position, rotation, and scale right there, which means our transform, this object, the shield, is now going to get into place, and it's going to be this is going to be the local for it. This is going to be where the target is. So we're going to say this transform local position is going to equal the position. The transform's local scale is going to equal the scale, and the transform's rotation is going to equal a quaternion Euler. And with that, I can actually just place in the rotation from there. So now we have the position, location, and the scale and the rotation. On trigger enter, what it should do is move the object over if the other player name is equal to this and it receives a trigger event from it. So let's go ahead and jump back into Unity and test that it works out for us. Now instead of moving the player, instead of moving the shield and or the player where you have to test it and they have to move all the way over, something to remember is simply either make a copy of it or move it over to where it's right in front of the player. We don't want to make it, when you're doing a test, you don't want to spend 10 or 15 minutes to get to a location. Be sure that you're just simply moving the player or the object to that place for testing. Alright, so we have our shield right here. We'll push play. And when the player comes in, so now we should be able to walk over to it. And when we click on it here, we can double check, did we get any kind of feedback for it? So nothing came through on the log. So what that means is that we want to add one extra element to it. We'll double check to be sure that it works with this. So I'm going to pause the game. I'm going to do this while it's running to do a test. With the shield selected, I'm just going to say rigid body. And then we're going to turn off gravity and say use kinematic. And then going back to here in the game mode, unpause, and then walk back over to it. There we go. So we still don't have the pickup, so this is a good test because what we now have to do is apply the check out how the character is being applied in terms of what can be assigned to a trigger event and a collision event. So remember, when you're using a different package, you got to make sure that your layer set is set to the right one. So for instance, we've looked at this before in different videos, but just to bring it out this way, your project settings, if you go to your physics and down to your table, remember, if I go in here and I say default, default is not set for anything. Our current layer is default. If we want our collider to work with the player, there's only a couple of options you can use that with, and that player collider is one of the main ones. So what we want to do from here, we're going to go ahead and turn off the play button. We know that the shield itself, this shield will work if the layer is set to collider. And then we also want to finish off on our script. We want to make sure our target is going to be the hand. Right here, right hand, and down below it says shield. So now that we know that these two are on the right one, the layer is set to the right one, we can test it again. Alright, so now we have this one, and then we walk up to it. We now have the player with it inside, but the hand rotation, if you notice, is set to a little bit of an awkward angle. So we'll take a look at that next and figure out how to set it correctly when the player picks it up. But for now, the hand does pick up the object when they walk over it. So we'll make sure that we set the original one, which is also going to be up at the top, the shield the player actually is going to be using up there. We're going to set this shield to the collider. And then we're going to set the target. Remember, it's in her hand. Shield right here, and set that one to right there. So that's going to be our basic setup for it, and then the next one we'll polish off where the location works and make sure all of our values, our numbers and stuff are set in place.